I want a 24 by 36 building, and you want it in wood, you're gonna get one in wood, but it doesn't say anything else. And they have the option of doing that, something else. Whereas a document like this, it says, we are going to have a wood building, there's gonna be 2 by 6 framing, it's gonna have X insulation, and it's going to have metal siding.
These kind of windows, this kind of paint.
This kind of paint.
So these kind of
That's the
fixtures.
difference,
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
it's the difference between the
Long
two
list.
processes. It's a very long list. It's the difference between the two processes. Yes. So you bid out and received bids for modular, perfectly acceptable in the regards that that's what was, you talked about in your bid document, your request for proposal, in this case, but hopefully a bid from here on out. And, it was to be such and such size, it was kind of to replicate this, and you had some pictures and definitions of what you wanted, okay? If it's public money, and the lending institution doesn't say you have to open it up to anybody and everybody who wants to bid. You can't just say, but you can only do it here in Townsend, because it's public money. Even though the money may come from Townsend, it's still public money. It's a definition of public money. So, you as an entity, as the Broadwater County, do have, if it's stated in your bid document, the right to not take any of the bids. You say, I'm sorry, we can't afford it, and that's it.
And that would be outlined in the
Yeah,
instructions.
that's actually stated in the instruction. So what you're doing here is trying to fix a condition that just got passed there. Okay, so we're trying to fix that. So if you put out a new bid document, it gives everybody the opportunity to rebid the project on equal apples and apples, oranges and oranges. And if you want to put a preference as to location, in other words, you have to be clear that your funding institution will allow that. If you want, but if it won't allow it, then you have to open it up to anybody and everybody. So you get a bid out of Helena, you can't exclude them because they're from Helena. It just, that's part of the process, part of the definition. So, before you, all of this has to be done and approved before you get a building permit. Now, if you take the latter of the solutions, the first one is, if the architect does it, he's approved the drawings, okay? The second one, if you bid it and you say, and in this sample, I'll use an example of what you've done so far. You've got some modulars that you've approved. I think, did you like the bid? The modular? Did you? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but before they can build it, or before they can even bring it here, they have to send a set of drawings to you for review and approval by an engineer and or architect that relates to the local building conditions. So if, for example, they pulled in here tomorrow at your site and said, well, here it is, and it wasn't pre-approved, you can send it back. But if it's pre-approved and it comes and it meets the criteria, meets the intent of the law, the intent of the code, then you block build it. Okay, so.
Well, I think we'd want to make sure we put that in the plans too.
Yeah, but, yeah, of course, but they're going to, but you should require that a set of shop drawings be submitted for architect's review and approval, or engineer's review and approval, however you want to state that. Now, I'm under contract with WWC, so if you wanted me to approve it, you probably should say architects and engineers approval, okay? Because they hold the contract. So, in that case, but once that's been approved, fine. If they should send it to you, send the drawings to us, and it's not approved, then we send it back and says, it is not approved based on the following items. And they have an opportunity to fix or repair those items, or readjust those items. And if they do so, then it can be approved. So it's not, it's just, it's a simple thing. It's just the detail that you have to keep track of.
Right.
Now, should you, during the process, decide that you want to change something, and let's take your water thing, for example, okay? You wanted to change something, and it was under the general contract, not broken out in a separate item like it is here, okay? Then you would have to go to that contractor and say, we want to do this, you get a shop, you would get a change order. And it needs to be reviewed and approved before it becomes part of the construction documents. So, I think by rebidding this and looking at your documentation very carefully, I think you can do what you need to do. I think you need to go to the extreme of the first line item.
So would you, on the building permit end of it, I would suggest in the instructions to bidder that the contractor be responsible for the building permit.
The contractor is responsible for purchasing the permit. But it
You
needs
know,
to
we
be
would
approved
review and
prior.
approve the
The
plans, but
documentation.
then they would have to go actually get
The
the.
contractor purchases the permit, okay, based upon the approved plan.
Did have that in their bid anyway.
Yeah.
And it's gotta go through the, not only does it go through the architect, then it goes through the county, which is the state in this case,
Mm-hmm, right.
okay? And it has to be reviewed for permits there, and that's where they purchase the permit, is
Right.
in
So we
Helena
would put that on the
and state.
contractor.
Goes down to the office.
We'll come back to that question when we get down to, I guess, number 5, because then that throws a wrinkle in it. So before we do that, Ron, when that architecture stuff, which I wrote was based on our conversation, did I write anything incorrectly in that section?
No, I think you pretty much
Do you want
covered
to
it,
correct anything?
in general. I think
Okay.
we're okay.
That sounds good. So then, advertising and bidding process, let's just talk through, assume I'm a dummy on construction law, because I am. Let's just talk through kind of what are the steps that we go through, and any of the three of you that wanna take over right now, go for it.
You wanna lead on that?
Well, my understanding is that you have to advertise for at least 21 days, minimum. So, you would put it out for, I think you have to advertise at least twice, and you have to give them a minimum of 21 days between the time you, first advertisement to the time you open the bids.
Check your funding source, they may say 3. What is your funding source?
In InterCal, Julie Flynn is who we've been working with, Board of
You'll probably go with
Investments.
1 too, but check, make sure that they don't say 3.
Okay,
Some funding sources like CBDG funding require 3 issuance of the ad.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, very. So anyway, 21 days is typically the minimum. Now, we like to go, it's kind of a catch-22. The shorter the time frame, sometimes the higher the bid. A little bit longer, you might get a little better bid because they got a little more time to prepare everything they need. You know, otherwise they're gonna build in some risk into that bid. So we like to go a month. We like to go 4 weeks for a bid. But I mean, we've done lots of projects at 21 days too. So it really is kind of up to you guys and how quickly you want to get through it. And the advertisement. If you have to advertise 3 times, that might be kind of
When you
tight.
have to, you might add another week on.
Yeah.
It's
You might have to
just
add
for the advertising time.
So that's a good point. If we have to advertise 3 times, then you're probably 4 weeks.
You also have to allow enough time in the bidding process that the contractor has time to contact and verify his bonding requirements and costs, so he can build it into his bid. Okay. And sometimes if you do it too short, you can't get the bid bonding
So
information quick enough.
I usually recommend 4 weeks. The minimum is 3, but I usually recommend 4.
Where does it have to be advertised?
Local paper.
Just right here, so.
I'd recommend.
I mean, we
I
like
make
to,
writing paper, but
we like to get it out, you know, it depends on the project and the size of the project. If you wanna get bidder, you know, big contractors to look at it, then you might advertise in Helena and Bozeman, and Butte maybe. But if you're more interested, it really is kind of, it's up to you, it's really, there's no, the only minimum is you have to advertise in your local paper. That's the only requirement.
to be honest with you, I saw your advertisement through the IR.
You did.
And I looked at it and I said, this is odd. But it's not including me, so I just went on. You know, I didn't even think about it. I had no idea it was sitting here, but, you know.
So in terms of the let's say a bidder wants to go look at the site. Do you give a site visit or something like that where they can go actually walk the ground?
Pre-bid meeting
A pre-bid?
Pre-bid meeting.
Talk to us about
is what we, typically that's about halfway through the bidding process, probably 2 weeks into that, after that first advertisement, you set up a pre-bid meeting where you meet the contractors on site. You can make it mandatory or non-mandatory. In this case, I would make it non-mandatory. In some cases, you might make it mandatory just if it's a huge project. So that all the contractors are there, they can ask questions, everybody's involved. In this case, I would make it non-mandatory, but you would just set up a pre-bid meeting to meet on site and then just go through the project and contractors can ask questions and you can answer them or get back to them.
I'd also like to make it available when it's a non-mandatory. Make someone who knows the project, often the owner's representative, available by a phone number in which someone can pass through and go take a look if they want. Okay. I think, Mike, you did that with a couple.
Yeah, so you can make Mike the contact for the, on the bid, so the contractors would contact Mike to get the bid documents, and then also if questions, and then he can get with Ron or, whoever, and get the questions answered and get them back out to the contractor.
Now, in the process, you're gonna want the bids, they're to be enclosed, sealed, and they're to be received in your designated location, whether it's in this chambers or at the front desk or wherever, and to be date stamped, time stamped. And so that when everybody's gonna make a decision, sits around the table and all of them at the same time. So there's no opportunity for someone to say collaboration. Okay. And then you need to record those. Now, you have the option of holding your decision until you've had a chance to discuss what you want to do, or you can award a contract to the lowest responsible bidder at that time. You have that option.
And usually what we do is we take the bids, we'll open them, we'll come over and open them with you, and then typically what we do is we'll take them back and review the bids, make sure that they look, or Mike can, whoever, review the bids, maybe call references, that kind of thing, make sure that everything looks good, especially with that low bidder. And then, we would come back to you the following week with a recommendation to either award to the lowest bidder or maybe not, maybe be the second lowest bidder, depending on,
And
how that works.
to give you a reason for that, I personally have found in one bid, the guy said he had his bonding insurance. I verified the bonding insurance, he didn't. He had a certificate from a previous project and he just kind of filled in a name. He had not bonded the project.
And we have a large
That's why
project,
we get involved there.
we have a large project in Anaconda, that a park project where the low bidder did not include the bid bond with the bid, and he got disqualified because he did not have a bid bond. And so.
That's happened right here before.
Yeah, so, I mean, it happens, but it helps to take that time, that extra week to review the bids, make sure the low bidder, that just saves you guys from any, questions. You can tell everybody, yeah, we reviewed them, they look, they look good, so, okay.
We
So-
have done that, we did that the last time too, I just wanted you guys to know that.
So in terms of what's available for bid, for them to look at, they've got the site visit, they've got the ability to answer questions, they've got the invitation for bid, they've got the specifications from the engineer site work. Is there anything else that they need, or is that pretty much it?
Well, like I said, I think it would be beneficial to put together a bid form and an invitation, instructions to bidders
Okay.
to go along with the plans.
Are you volunteering to do that, or?
Yes. Do that. I can work with Ron.
Yeah, and do you know, the reason to put a bid form together, this had varying levels. And in that bid form, you need to state that you get to pick and choose and or it's all inclusive, whatever you elect to do. But you have to state it in that form. So if you get one part of that bid, it comes in as perfectly acceptable, and another part of that bid that comes out, it looks outrageous. You can elect not to take it and go to the next bidder. Not often done, but it has happened.
Well, and then with the bid form, they also have to sign it. they have to seal it and everything, that this is their bid. And, you know, it kinda gets rid of that,
And depending on what you put in your bids, John, in your instructions, a bid can be required to be held for 30 to 45 days with no variations or changes. So if you have time as an entity to take your time and get it right, okay, and that includes contracts and the whole works. So, in other words, you can't be 2 weeks into it and bidder says, yeah, I got another project I'm not interested. So you can't walk away from it.
it's tied to his bid.
He's tied to it for that time frame.
But yeah, so I would say we definitely wanna put together a bid form. And like I said, we've got lots of them, so it's not hard to do. And we can work with Mike on that, and that set up, and, you know, how everybody wants it done, so.
Is there anything else before we go to the next item? Well, this next item is probably the biggest one to discuss, and that is whether to do it as a general contractor or depending on how the bids work out, multiple contractors for different parts. And to clarify one thing up front, state law says that it's illegal to break up a project into different parts to bid it if by doing so you're trying to get under a competitive bidding threshold. We're not doing that. But regardless of how many individual parts are bid or how many individual contractors bid, we're still going through the competitive bidding process that we've talked about here. So that was the big item that initially I looked at with Brian Hopkins and you know, we were comfortable from the very beginning. That was not a concern anyway. So next the question is, do we bid it as where one general contractor can then be the general contractor for the entire process, or we do multiple separates? And this has been the issue that I've heard the most from the public. I'm sure all of you have too, but I've received either phone calls or emails or, you know, hey yous on the street. This has been probably the item that has raised the most public discussion. So, experts, take it away. Tell us pros and cons of the two different approaches. How about that? Let's start with that.
I guess from my perspective, I mean, I can see it done both ways. From an engineering perspective, I think a general contractor is better because they can coordinate all of the disciplines. If you have different pieces that you bid out separately, who, you know, is Mike gonna coordinate all those pieces? You know, who's gonna coordinate all those different pieces? That's the nice thing about a general contractors. They coordinate all their subs to get the work done. So that's one thing I think we would have to nail down if you did bid this out into separate pieces, is who is going to coordinate all the different pieces. Because somebody's gonna have to do it, because they're not gonna coordinate with each other. I can see it being a scheduling nightmare for them. So I think that would be important. I'm not saying we can't do it that way, I'm just saying we have to identify who is going to coordinate the project. Somebody will. Either that's Mike, or that's WWC, or somebody. Or you hire and I've seen entities hire a general, you know, that put out an RFP for a construction manager. That then goes forward and coordinates all the subs. So it's, you know, WWC can do it. I think, you know, Mike could probably do it if he's got time to do it. There's a way to do it. It's just the general contractor, the general is kind of nice that way, and you bid it to one guy, he coordinates all of it, and you don't have to worry about it. You just know that it's gonna get done, and it's gonna get done by such and such a date. You don't have to worry about coordinating all this other stuff. That's my short opinion, I guess.
I'm gonna add just one point to that. If you have it under separate agreements, and something gets damaged, it's this way, he did it. If you have a general contractor, it's just gonna be fixed.
Liability stops with the general.
That's right.
Okay. So, that's kind of a pro and con right there. Because if you have a slab that gets cracked because the guy got a little too close to his backhoe when he's putting in a trench, and his wheel hit the edge and it snapped it, who's responsible, especially he says he didn't do it? A good general contractor will step to the contractor will step to the plate, but sometimes, maybe he didn't even know he did it, you know, that kind of thing. And it still has to be fixed, so who pays for it and how does it get fixed? Or do we live with it? Here's my 2 cents.
Can you talk through the change order process if you don't have a general contractor, does, who approves those? Just the owner's representative approves those?
Well, any
Or does
change
it-
orders would be would have to be approved by the owner's representative and the commissioners.
Okay.
It wouldn't matter if you had a general or separate pieces. You know, you could work with subs the same way as you do a general. If there's a change order in any of the different areas, you would do it the same way. Again, the general's kind of nice because he is the point of contact for the whole project. And so he would, any change orders that come from a sub would go through him, you know, and like I said, it's just one point of contact instead of 5, you know, but, again, I think it's more of a preference thing. I think we could do it either way, we would just need to identify who is going to coordinate, all the pieces. That's gonna be the important piece, because I don't think, you couldn't, it'd be difficult to just bid each piece and then just say, yep, go for it, without having a point of contact or somebody to really manage that project.
And if a change order requires engineering, let's say a water line, it needs to be approved by the engineer, that you're actually making a change to an engineered system. So,
If there was a change order and there was a general contractor, the cost would be borne by the general contractor or by the county? For the change
would
order
depend.
costs?
yeah, that really,
It would depend on the change order. It would depend on the issue, I guess. If it was, say it was in the civil end of it, and we had the water main, okay? And we had everything identified in the contract documents, size of the water main, everything was there. And a contractor came to us and said, oh, well, we didn't notice the water line was 6-inch, we thought it was 4-inch. We didn't account for a 6-inch water line. Well, we go to the contractor and say, well, you didn't bring plans, that's not our responsibility. But if it was something that neither the county nor the contractor could foresee, such as maybe there's an existing sewer main buried under there that nobody knows about, and they hit it when they're digging the water main, and now they've got to remove the sewer main to put in the water main. That is a change order that the county would probably have to pay for, because nobody knew it was there. Does that make sense? So if it's something that nobody knew it was unforeseeable circumstance or something like that, then it would be something that owner would probably have to pay for. If it's something the contractor should have included in their bid and they didn't, then that's on them. That would be a change order for us, for this group. That would be a change order maybe for the general and his sub, but we wouldn't get involved in
Okay.
it's kind of like, I put in 36-inch windows because they were cheaper. And actually it was called out for a 48-inch window, and they get caught. And you absolutely want that 48-inch window, then whoever will put in that window, who would put in the original window, has to change it out
that at their cost.
at their cost. Or you can say, I want a credit for, I didn't get the window I wanted, so I want a credit for that cost. I got less than I planned on, and therefore I get money back.
Or vice versa, if the county approves a building plan with 36-inch windows, and then decides halfway through the construction, no, those windows are too small, we want 48-inch windows. That would be a change order that the contractor could say, okay, well, that's an increase in cost that you need to pay for. So, that's another.
That's why you guys make up this contract, you have these plans, everything is,
It's all called out.
yeah, most of you guys don't miss anything.
Right.
These unforeseen things, like you said, the sewer line,
We hope not.
that's different.
We hope not.
But,
No project's perfect, but yes.
well, I know, and on one like this here, you should be able to,
Yeah, now in this case, if, you know, going with option 2, where the contractor comes up with the drawings, and we review and approve the drawings, it would still be the same. So the contractor would submit drawings for the building, we would review and approve them, and then they would have to follow that plan. If they change it, or something goes wrong, then it's on them, or if the county comes back and says, no, we don't like how that looks, we want it this way instead. That might be an increase in cost. So we could still do it the same way, regardless of which direction we go.
So then let me ask you about, well, let's talk about liability first. So general contractor, what are their liability, their bonding or insurance requirements? I guess where I'm going is I need to understand if we don't have a general contractor, if we do it in this other way, how we can protect the county from that liability.
All the subs, how it was explained to me by the attorney, in our meeting, Ryan, is all the subs are required to carry their own bonding.
Yep, yeah, they would still have their own bonds. They would have to do performance and payment bonds for their piece. You know, so the electrical sub would have, the contractor would have to have, for his bid, he would have to have 100% payment and performance bonds for his piece. Now, with the general, he just does a performance and payment bond for the whole thing. So he's just bonding the entire thing.
So-
Now, whatever his agreement is with his subs on whether they bond with the general, that's not really the county's issue.
He's gonna make sure it's done.
Right, as long as but each sub would also have the same requirement. They would have to provide their own bonding.
Especially if you're breaking it up in pieces.
Yep.
Now, the next part of that, who's responsible on the county side?
Yeah.
If Mike, for example, is assigned as an employee of the county has a liability. How do you insure that? How do you do, there are insurance policies, they're expensive, but you can have that insured for this specific only to hold harmless the county to a certain degree, okay?
So Mike would act as the construction manager.
And he would act as construction manager. Now, if you hired a construction manager other than Mike, a separate entity, a separate person, say you hired one of the two of us, we would carry our own insurance, okay, protect us as well as you. Okay. The general contractor, on the other hand, which is the traditional way, would hold a insurance policy or bond that holds the county harmless. It protects you too,
And the engineer.
and the engineer,
And architect.
and architect, all of us.
All
Holds us all harmless. But, you know, there are so many different aspects to this, and if you start breaking it up into, all of a sudden you've got an insurance policy here, and you put here, one here,
Yeah.
rather than
No, each of
one
the subs,
general.
each
Okay.
of the subs would have their own insurance too. But, you know, like Ron's saying, the liability would take on, or the county would take on some liability as a construction manager. Just because you're coordinating the project and, you know, unless you hire a construction manager under contract or something. So if Mike was to do it, you would be taking on some liability as the construction manager. But each sub would still have their own insurance also, so,
Smart business.
Oh, yeah, well, the general's gonna make sure they have it.
Right.
yeah.
So then what's the cost difference to this project if we go with the general traditional way or we try to save money by doing this other method? That's what I understand several people have opined that it's significant, but I haven't really gotten a number of what.
That's a tough one.
So right now, we're at about $400,000, a little under $400,000 project.
If you took, I'm gonna try to answer that question, but it's a hard question to answer. Under the traditional method, we are very specific as to the materials that are to be used or not to be used. And as a result, you will use XYZ tile and you will use XYZ windows. Whereas under the method that you've elected to do, you've given an option or an opportunity for the person providing that service to select the cheapest window they can find or the cheapest tile they can find and use it, as long as it meets the 4x4 tile or 48x48 window. And it meets certain energy requirements, okay? So in the long run, the cheapest way is the way you've taken, the modular or the preliminary, okay? But you get what you pay for. I warn you. get paid, you get what you pay for, okay? It's a little more expensive to go through the other method because it's very specifically called out and it's very specifically regulated. So it costs a little more to do the traditional method, but you get a better facility and it'll last longer. So where's the cost? In front or behind? You pay for it now or you pay for it? You're right.
And I guess, thinking about it a little bit, I think with the way this project is set up, using modular buildings instead of site-built buildings, well, at least on the building, I think you could get away probably a little cheaper with the sub version. Just because, you know, a general is going to be coordinating carpenters and all this sort of stuff. Whereas if you have a modular building, you don't have, you know, they're just somebody's just bringing it in and setting it up.
They'll be here maybe 48 hours.
You know, and you know, you can sub out the site work, separately, that's not an integral part of the building. So I would say, you know, with the way this project is proposed, you could probably get by a little cheaper with subbing, than a general. But again, it comes back to the liability and does he have time to coordinate all of this stuff, you know, and, you know, whereas a general, you know, he takes all that on.
When you say a little, give a ballpark.
Right. That's a really tough question. It really is. I wish
That's why I'm
I
asking it.
could, I really wish I could give you an answer,
Well, let's just take, I'm gonna give you an answer.
Okay.
Take the numbers you've got. You got two numbers, one's a stick frame, one's not. Or two's not. Answer your question?
Well, that's the type of construction, but then the question is, if you have a general running.
if we do modular,
Yeah, in a modular versus stick frame, okay? But in the general sense, you probably cost a little more for the general because it's gonna take longer to do a general on a stick frame than it will for.
well, I think what they're asking is just, if we go with the modular option, we're doing modular, what's the cost difference if we sub out each piece or if we do a general? Not,
Oh, I think
disregarding
you're,
stick
no,
built.
you're right. The way you have it laid out right now, versus the other method, the traditional method with the general contractor, you probably get a lesser cost. How much? It's a hard one to judge. It really is.
I mean, I would say with the general, a general's probably gonna tack 10% on for management. You know, so you might be between 400 and 450,000 rather than 400. You know, just knowing
It's pretty close, yes.
you know, contractors typically will throw about 10% on their general. You know, working with I worked a lot with Swink, they're a big building contractor. They typically sub most everything out, and they typically will just tack about 10% on for just management.
Depending on your construction season, I've seen them as low as 4 and as high as 20% for general construction.
So I think you'd probably be over that 400. How far? It's kind of, yeah, there's a lot of factors that play into that. Season, available schedule to do the work.
Distance from your project.
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer.
Okay.
So you're saying 10 to 20% would be a rough ballpark for us to consider
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
total? Okay,
Those are
And-
expenses, as you were a general contractor, you might want to consider that in your budget, okay? For the extra time.
okay.
and it may not either. It just depends on the contractor, it depends on their schedule, weather, you know, what time of year. If they're starting this in the fall, your prices are gonna be higher because fall weather is a little more dicey. If they're working on it July and August, where it's pretty consistent, it's gonna be nice weather in July and August, then the prices are gonna be probably a little lower. You know, if you bid it in the winter versus in the spring, you know, they're just starting their schedule for the next year. You know, bid it in the spring, now their schedule's probably pretty full now for the year, so your prices might be a little higher. So there's just a lot of factors that go into
Now,
it.
if you were to bid it in the fall for spring construction, you get a better price.
Yep. That's your best time. Fall
That's your
should-
best time. Bid it in the fall for spring start.
Because they want a guarantee of spring work.
They want to guarantee.
They're starting to put things in their queue.
Makes sense.
Okay, so the last issue is the city of Townsend approval. I was at the city council last week, and the city council is basically saying, okay, we've heard snippets here and there, we want the plan. And particularly because this property's on the edge of the city limits, so to get the sewer and water, there's two options. One is the city could annex that land. The second option is not annex the land, but extend the service area for sewer and water. And they basically said, you know, we'd like to see this thing, from top to bottom, so we understand what exactly we're being asked to agree to, and what exactly are you asking for? What does the county prefer, annexation over the other one? And so, I visited with them, I said, I'll take the message back to the county that you want a presentation and a clear idea of what you're, asking, or being asked to do. And so, if the next city council meeting is a week from tonight, that might be too soon, and I said, well, that's fine. I said, at some point when the plan is really in place, then you'll expect somebody from the county to be able to come and do that. And then as the same thing I advised the city, I'm the county attorney and the city attorney, so in this case, I don't expect there to be a big us versus them type of situation, but if it comes to that, then I'll just have to advise both the city and the county, saying, I'm representing you both, so I'm going to do that, I have to have your, basically, your informed consent, saying you can represent us both, and in which case I'll tell the city the pros and cons, and I'll tell the county the pros and cons, and there won't be I won't be able to hide the ball for either of you, I'll just lay it all out and go from there. But the engineers are kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, I'm the city planner, so I'm kind of in the same situation, but I think I talked to Laura about this a little bit last week last Monday at the thing. My recommendation would be to put something in writing, just a letter from the county that says, and I can draft that letter and get it to you for review, but basically, my recommendation is to request water and sewer services, request the city of Townsend to extend their service area boundary, request that the city does not annex at this point, but that the county will sign a waiver of protest to future annexation. So basically, my reasoning for that is, it takes a month to 2 months to annex a piece of property into a municipality. And it costs money. It's gonna cost the county money, it's gonna cost the city money to go through that process. There's no benefit to annexing the county into the city. There's no taxable value. They're not gonna make any money. So, but in the future, there could be property on the other side of the county property that may want city water services that would need to annex. And in that case, in the future, it would make sense to annex the county property so that the next door neighbor can annex into the city and get city water services. So that would be my recommendation. It would save, that time and money, because the county would have to petition the city to annex. That's gonna take, we'd have to help you put that petition together, with the help of Corey. And then, on the city side of it, Corey and I would have to help the city get through the annexation process, which is public hearing, you gotta go out for public comment, it's a pretty decent process to do that, so, with no benefit. So, that's my recommendation for the same to the city too, when I talk to them regardless, so. Anyway, that's my thought, is that I think that the county should put that in writing and just request that formally so that the city council has something to actually act on. Right now, I think they're confused because they really don't have anything, they don't have anything to act on. They don't have any formal requests of what you want to do. So, that's my thought. So, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's good, and, I think they're looking for a recommendation, and they're looking for reasons one way or the other, so I think that would be helpful.
So with your approval, I'm gonna get it over to you guys to review. And maybe I'll get that to you before next week's commission meeting. And
That'd be
then,
great.
and then we can maybe get that to the city that day, or whatever.
Okay.
So I think we've got some items here. Did anyone, before I kind of recap, does anyone want to add anything? Mike, you haven't talked much, do you want to take away?
I do have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
Ron, can you speak a little bit to the process from your perspective as the architect? We have a modular that we've kind of defined as the best option for Broadwater County at this point for a variety of reasons. Could you speak to the architectural process, their architect, you, and how you work together, and why there isn't necessarily an architect stamp on the modular building plans for the bidding process?
The modular building building standards are different than the Uniform Building Code. It has to do with weight, structure for moving, and this kind of thing. It's a whole set of different rules for construction type from the standard International Building Code. To use them, perfectly fine. They're good buildings, okay? The only thing you'd want to do in the process of your bid, I know you're stepping out beyond your question here a little bit, but is that you say, we're gonna use a modular building here, and XYZ is going to provide it. I understand it, knowing that you've already done something with your modular building. And it's going to be set in this location, and you as the contractor are going to provide a slab or whatever you're going to provide. And it's going to come in, and it's going to be coordinated with the general and board construction management. Okay. The process of it coming to me, my review process as the architect doesn't meet building code in terms of the International Building Code. But it has to be certified before it leaves that factory that it meets this other code. That certification is enough. My review is, does it meet American Disabilities Act? Does it, if you're mounting it on a slab or a footing on a foundation, does it meet those standards for setting it on the ground? As long as it's on the truck, it's fine, but once it leaves the truck, then it has to meet certain International Building Code standards. That's where I come in, just to follow up on that. So, doesn't meet the energy standards of kind of things.
So you're saying your review as the architect is actually on the rear end of a modular versus the front end like a stick built,
That's
correct?
Yeah, my review, well, even on a stick built, I have some review on the rear end as well. But on a modular, before they build it, they send me a set of drawings, saying this is what we're doing. So that should they need, instead of a 210 door, they need 3-foot doors. They can do it while it's under construction rather than remodeling when it gets here. Okay. So they can build it and get it approved before they finish the construction, and it can come ready to sit on the ground. Whereas a stick building, we call out the size of the doors and things, but they come back to me and say the following type of door is going to be used, and I look at it and say, yep, that's the right size, and that's the right fire code standard. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Okay,
You'd be building it in pieces and parts here where the other one's built elsewhere, and somebody else is taking on that building part. Okay?
thank you. My next question is for Mike. I know you were trying to be quiet, I'm not gonna let you. You know, a lot of other counties, use, commissioners, road supervisors, or maintenance, building supervisors. For this, none of them that responded to me said, we just pick somebody off the shelf, well, other than commissioners. What my question to you is, Mike, is one, what is your preference? Are you interested in being the construction manager of this project? And do you have any experience that says that you would be qualified if you are interested?
I mean, I'll do what I'm always told to do, so, and, I mean, I do have experience, I've been in the building industry for, like, 25 years. So, as a contractor, my own contractor, multi-state for almost 15.
So if we move ahead on this project, are you interested on a personal level in being the construction manager for it?
Yeah, I'll run it for you. I'll coordinate it, and I've done that in the past.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question kind of goes to the end point that I won't bring up until Corey brings up number 6. And I had a question for you, Jeremy. At our meeting, 2 weeks ago now, Sean had said a general contractor that's hired separate would be a risk to the county because they'd want to change the project. Would we have a protection for the county with a general contractor to say, no, these are your parameters, you can't get creative on the county's dime? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I believe there is a way to do that, in the plan set, with specs. And basically, they're calling out, if you have a certain modular building in mind to use, then typically you would call that manufacturer and model out and say, we're approved equal. Then they're gonna look at that first, and look at the cost of that, and then they're gonna go out to see, okay, is there another one that's the same, that's cheaper? Maybe they could save you some money. If it's a similar model, similar construction, they might be able to save you some money. I wouldn't say that generals, in my experience, typically generals are good about, if you get a good one. I've had not so good one. I mean, there's always a chance you're not gonna get exactly what you want with who you hire. But in general, most contractors are very conscious of budget and what you want, okay? And so it's in their best interest to make you happy, because you're going to be a contact for them on future projects, right? So what they do is important, and they know that, if you get a good one. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a liability to have a general contractor involved, that would, I don't think they're gonna necessarily change it. They might make suggestions, but you don't have to accept them. Does that make sense?
It does.
And typically, through the bidding process, those things will come out. They'll ask questions, and they'll say, hey, are you stuck on a modular building, can we stick built it? If you're stuck on a modular building, then you just tell them, no, we're stuck on a modular building. This is the kind we want. If you find one that's equal, then we'll look at it. That makes sense?
Mhm.
So no, I don't think the way you wanna bid this out, if you bid it to a general this way, they don't just have a license to do whatever they want, I guess if that's what you're asking. I think there's a way with the instructions to bidders, bid form, and notes on the plans, that we can prevent anything like that from happening.
Back to the bidding process a little bit. In the bidding process, there's this process called substitutions. So it should a general contractor want to substitute, and let's use Jeremy's example, a different manufacturer, it would have to come back for review and approval, as if you were doing the first one. And if it's okay, then now you've got two choices, for example, and they both are equals. But every bidder must be informed that that substitution has occurred. It just can't be given to one bidder.
Now, I've had contractors where they automatically think that they can substitute something, they bid it that way, and then they come back to us after when construction starts, and they say, oh, well, I'm working on one right now, but they did that on. Well, we assumed we could use it. No, you can't use that. And we told them, no, you can't do that, you have to use what was spec'd in the plan. In some cases, it works out good for the owner, in some cases it doesn't, but that's what we're here for. That's what Mike's here for, is to look at those things and and go from there. A lot of contractors have good suggestions, you know, and they're gonna look for ways that they can save money. And they want the project. In my experience, most contractors want the project to be a good project. Because that's something that goes in there
Good
on their resume,
certification.
right? So if it turns out badly, then one bad project is, you know, not good. You can have a million good projects, and it's always the one bad project that always comes back to haunt you, right?
Sure.
So most contractors are, especially if it's a good general contractor, they're gonna be knowledgeable enough to know and work with you, those types of things.
Okay,
Again, you're gonna have that same thing, I think, with subs a little bit too. You know, you're gonna have subs that are gonna wanna change things out and do things a little different and stuff like that. So I don't think it would necessarily be limited to just generals. You know, I think you're gonna be, every project you fight that a little bit.
you're gonna have issues no matter which way you go. It's just a given with what we're doing. That makes sense.
And I still think that with this kind of project that you've got, the sub way to go, or with bidding out to subs is probably, is a good way to go. I don't think that, I'm not saying that a general is a way to go, that's one way to go. But you can definitely do it with the subs too, you know, with Mike as managing. You know, it's just, you're gonna have the same stuff regardless of who you go. You know,
And it
where
is
you
a
change.
simple project, I
Right.
mean, it's,
Mhm.
it is,
Yep.
okay.
I don't know.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
that answers your question.
It did,
Okay.
yes, thanks. That's something that's been weighing on me, so I wanted to clarify.
Well, and it's a concern, and it's a concern with every project. You know, who you end up selecting is, you just don't know. It's a big question mark when you're in this phase. You just don't know who it's gonna be. And there are good ones and there are not so good ones out there. So it's just, you know, it is kind of a gamble. But that's hopefully, once we get through the bid process and we get the bids in, we review the references and we do those kinds of things, kind of vet that out a little bit before you make a decision too. So.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Corey, I don't know whether this is something you would want to consider. If you state in there it will be awarded to low bidder, then it has to be awarded to the low bidder. But if you don't say that and you say lowest responsible, there's the word responsible.
Right.
Then you have a choice if you should find an anomaly in the low bid.
We always put
Pretty
lowest,
important.
lowest responsible bidder.
Real important.
Clarification.
So do we have to go back on the modular and redo it?
That's what's being proposed, yes.
Okay.
Did you talk to Brian at all about that?
Hmm.
Okay.
Not recently, I did.
Are you referring to the one that just put, that you awarded already, or?
Mhm.
Dr. Corey, I'm not sure exactly what the legalities of pulling that award is.
Have you already awarded the modular purchase?
We did, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Brian said is, because it's already been done, it's good, we went through the contract, and it has the hold harmless clause for the county in it. And he said with that one, because it's past 30 days, we're probably good to go, if I'm not mistaken.
So you already have the modular, basically, awarded. So you'd just be awarding bids for subs to install that and then the site work.
Exactly,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah.
So that makes a difference then too, not
It's
necessarily on
still
the.
gotta be checked out.
Yep, yeah,
You know,
it's
it's
still.
Still
got
has
to
to
be-
be,
still
still
has
has
to
to
be-
be reviewed and approved.
Right.
There may have to be, after Ron's review, there may have to be some ADA modifications or something made to it, you know, without seeing it, we can't say, but.
But if we can get it
Yeah.
done before it's built, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and Jeremy wasn't at that meeting,
Yeah, I
so I
wasn't.
shouldn't have been asking you for clarification. It was
I-
true,
I'm
wasn't
waiting,
it?
I'm
You
waiting.
and Sean,
I'm
yeah.
pretty good at waiting. I get thrown questions all
So,
the time, so.
but you haven't awarded anything for the larger building, is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we pulled out all that so that we could start all over because we had the title wrong.
So in the plans, we would just basically say that on the modular building, that's not unusual. We would say that the modular building is supplied by the owner, because you've already awarded that piece of it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we would just instruct them to work with the owner and the manufacturer for installation of the building. And then I think we could still put the building permit on the contractor,
Yeah.
to go through that process of getting the building permit.
Okay, all right.
So we would just change, usually it's just a wording thing.
It's just what, make sure, it's like the housing authority buys refrigerators. It's still part of the permit process, okay?
Okay,
But they provide the refrigerators and the contractor does not.
makes sense.
We do a lot of projects where the owner supplies certain things, and you just state it in there, the owner, this is an owner supplied thing, you just have to install it.
Okay.
So that should be a problem.
So I think, are there any more commissioners, any more questions? I guess I see some follow-up work we need to do here then. The small one looks like it's maybe already done, the drawings with the change on the fill station.
Yeah, I think those are pretty much done. This, we've got this pretty much done for the heat, so we're just working on the grading drainage, sort of like last week, so. Yeah, the
You
plans.
made up a drawing now?
What's that?
You have a drawing made?
We have the plans for, yeah, are done. They should be ready to
Oh,
go
okay.
for review, so.
Before all, there wasn't actually just a floor plan, really, so.
Yeah,
I mean, you got drawings.
Yeah, we've got a plan set with site drawings, with the site drawings and the building stuff in it.
And we had that for the last bid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We had that for a while, we had that for the last one. It changed a little bit since then, just because of we had a fire hydrant, the fill station's not there anymore, a few changes, but other than that, it's still the same. We'll get those to you and maybe get those, so everybody can look at those and review them and make sure it's what everybody wants.
But it sounds like it's just minor changes.
Yeah, yep, not major, not major.
Maybe it's a statement that the modular will be provided by owner.
Yeah, no, that piece is easy, it's just wording. A lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
a lot
but
of
that's
this
the
stuff
county
is-
on the hook on this modular. And I'm not sure, especially out-of-state modulars coming in here.
I mean, if that's what you guys want us to do, then I guess that's kind of up to you guys. It really is wording on the plans to just say modular building provided by owner, the contractor has to install it. The building, so it's just some wording.
Okay.
Really,
Yes, it's like, say, the county stuck with this modular. So the owner, they're furnishing this, I don't think it's good.
So then I think the second issue is just in terms of the architecture method, are we, given the fact that we have a modular now, I don't know if that changes anything in terms of the method of moving through the architectural process, the traditional, we'll call it the traditional or the alternative. We've been in the alternative mode where the bidder does the shop drawings and front end work. Is there any reason to change from that, or should we proceed with that method as we go to?
That's what I thought you were doing now.
Well, we're talking about a couple, I think the majority of that focus will then be on the large building, because if the modular's already purchased and that design is known, and the site drawing, the engineer's already done, then basically you're looking at the bidder for the large building, whether they do their own shop drawings and their own advanced work, I guess, that then later our architect reviews, or whether the county wants to have the architect design that larger building
I
in
think
detail,
It should be that way.
and give it to them in the
It's
bid.
done, and then we're not in all this stuff. We're still in, as far as I'm concerned, a big mess with this modular.
Okay,
It,
well, but that's done, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that was awarded and purchased and.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
No, that's not true, Franklin, it was.
2-1 vote is still majority.
Hmm?
So back to, let me isolate my question, I'm just looking for guidance here. We've got a modular building, we have a site layout, that's all done. What we don't have is a detailed drawing of the larger building that we're all calling the pole barn. So the plan has been that whoever does that bidding does the advanced work on we're calling them shop drawings, basically. Their initial drawings that ultimately would be approved by our architect, or maybe modified and then approved. I'm gonna assume, unless I'm told differently, that we're gonna proceed along that same line, that the bidder will be responsible for doing those initial shop drawings and providing those later then our architect will later approve those prior to permitting and construction. That's the way we're going. So I'm gonna do that unless the commission tells us differently and says, no, let's go ahead and have our architect now do the detailed design of that building
I thought
and
that's
give
where,
that for the bid.
I think that's where it leads, that's one we can go,
First
and
option.
and have a general then.
It really is up to you guys. I mean, we can do it either way.
Which is the better way?
Well,
I mean, it's just a pole building, right?
there's pros and cons
So-
either way, and Ron
Yeah.
spent quite a bit of time on
Yeah, I
that
think there's
today.
pros and cons either way.
A pole building is a pre-engineered building, just same as a modular building, it's just different materials and different design, construction methods.
And it really depends on the contractor.
Yeah.
Whole building
Yes.
really depends on the contractor. If you design the building and put it out to bid, you're gonna limit yourself somewhat, wouldn't you, Ron? To specific
Yeah,
people who've already built that.
You've already gone this direction once, so, you
Whereas
That's
if,
where all these problems now.
whereas if you advertise for a, size and type, and then have the contractor come up with his own method for construction, that might broaden the contractors that could get it. Does that make sense?
It
Because there's a
does.
lot of different ways you can do a pole building.
And we want more input, not less, I would think.
So, I think it just come down to we're gonna have to be careful with the wording in the instructions to bidders, and just, in all the plans, just, I can work with Ron on that wording, and make sure that wording is right, so that the county's covered, so that the contractor knows that anything, if he bids, everything's gonna be approved by the engineer in the county. And
So the alternative method for the architect and engineering portion, just like the modular, is a good way to go with the pole building, to answer Corey's question, right?
Yeah,
You're already in that,
Yeah.
like Ron said, you're already in that process. I
Okay.
don't see any cons by switching gears and doing something different at this point.
and whether it's a pole building or whether it's a stick frame building, that's contractors' directives is set, provide a set of shop drawings, or a set of drawings, showing it's a viable building, and then it's my responsibility to say it's stand or it won't stand.
And then,
Okay.
and then we'd approve them, and then he would still have to go to the state and get the building permit.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Good.
Okay, so next item, the rebidding process. I think we need to, we're looking at a bid form and instructions. And are we asking you to work on that with us?
Yeah, I can do it. Ron, I can work with Ron on the instructions to bidders, and then work with Mike on how we wanna lay out the bid form.
Okay,
If we're going with the concept, then we wanna break out the disciplines in that bid form, so that the different disciplines can bid on that bid item. And we'll have to make sure the wording's right in the bid form,
Right.
so that somebody can actually bid on just one bid item.
Yeah, if they choose to do concrete only, they can bid concrete.
I don't
Leave the rest
think
blank.
I don't think we'd have to do separate bid
Oh,
forms
yeah.
for each item.
Well,
I think we could do
typical
one bid
of it.
form, and just, I think with some wording on the bid form, we could say you can bid on all items, or bid on only the items that you're bidding.
You so choose.
Right.
okay, so let's break these, let's do process before we get to the general or multiple. So, in the process, we need to do bid form and instructions.
Instructions to bidders.
The question was whether we do 21 days or 30 days advertisement. And I hadn't looked at the funding source. I could go back and look at the funding source and see if three notices or 30 days is required. I don't know if that's, remember if that jumped out at you at all.
I asked Julie Flynn per Sean, to see if they had any additional requirements over MCA standards. She said, nope, we have nothing additional.
Okay.
So,
It's just probably two.
So 2 and 21 days
Yeah.
then.
yeah,
So does,
There's a way to get 3 in that 2, but it's tight.
yeah.
Yeah.
So does the commission wanna change it? The default is 21 days, like, do you wanna change it from 21 days to 30 days is the question.
You always liked the 30, you said.
I like to go that extra week, just give bidders a little extra time to dot their i's, cross their t's type thing. It seems to help get rid of some of the risk that they typically build into their bids, but,
I'm fine with 30.
Yeah, and occasionally a bidder will not see it until the last advertisement, and it still gives him a week to pull everything together in a scramble.
yeah, and then by the time,
You can do it.
and also by the time you
You can do it.
advertise twice, and then you have a pre-bid meeting in there in the middle of that too, 3 weeks is pretty tight to get all 2 advertisements and a pre-bid meeting in there, so I usually recommend 30 days, but.
I'm fine with 30 days as well, but I would like to bring Mike into it at some point, because I have a question. You want it now?
Yeah.
Mike, if we do 30 days and the mandatory, or the non-mandatory meeting, how can we make this work best around your schedule coming up? I know you have some
Well,
time off
it's gonna
coming.
be a few weeks before we can put it out.
Okay, we can work well around you then. Okay,
And
that's
call
just
you
what I
when
wanted to
you're-
verify. You better take some time off.
And then we have, if we do 30 days, we have to advertise it 3 times, or does it matter?
Twice.
Twice.
Two, okay.
I do 3.
3, okay.
Whatever.
And then a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting?
Yep.
Now you can elect to put it in the local, just the local paper, or you can go distribute beyond that.
Okay.
I wouldn't go too far, but
Helena.
I would say Helena.
Helena, Bozeman.
Helena and Townsend at least, Bozeman if you want. It's kind of-
Contractors all over from
Yeah.
Bozeman doing the subdivision, most of the stuff is from Bozeman area, Bozeman and Helena.
Okay. And then the last part of that was, award at the time or agree to let the engineer review for sufficiency and then come back later.
Right.
Yeah, that's been our practice. I think it's a practice I don't want to get away from.
Open bids and then take them back and review them and then come back to the next meeting,
Yeah,
commission meeting with a recommendation.
I
Okay.
agree.
yeah.
Okay. And then, the last one's easier, the letter to the city, with, when the proposal is all done, then a letter to the city council, probably coming to a city council meeting, and, at this point, we're looking at recommending extend the service area, don't annex, but the county is willing to sign a waiver of protest if it's annexed in the future. Does that sound, is that on track?
Yes.
So,
And it's in keeping with our own subdivision regulations. We have subdividers all the time that have to sign that they will not oppose annexation or, in their case, RID or something.
Okay, so the last one, which is probably the toughest nut to crack, the general contractor or multiple subcontractors. What I had recommended in this was that, whoever, and I wasn't at the first meeting, so I don't know who was here criticizing it, but I know I've had a number of folks, contractors and non-contractors, reach out to me. So my recommendation is if the county, and it's your decision, the commission decides which way to go, that you hold a meeting specifically for that purpose to hear from the public. That's, would be my recommendation. And then I think the second thing, and it's hard to get what that number would be, but if we're assuming a 10%, maybe more cost estimate for I guess, higher cost if you have a general contractor, it may be, kind of a review of what does this do for our project overall. If we save $28,000 or whatever it was on planning to do the fill pump later, or the fill station later, are there any parts of this project that are lowest priority in terms of we need to get done, but we still wanna get the rest of the project done? Does that make sense? So,
You're suggesting cutting pieces out in order to potentially afford a general contractor?
I'm saying if there's a hard, and I think that's the first question, that's a good point, because that's bringing back to the question really, is there a hard ceiling dollar amount that the commission is not willing to spend over, and whatever that number is? And if that's, and, you know, you live on a budget, so if that's the hard ceiling, we can't get under it, or we have to get under it, so we get under it either by doing different methodology like this to save money, or we say we want the methodology for our own protection, and we therefore are going to look at other ways to adjust it. One thing that I hadn't counted on, I guess, in the cost is that Ron was saying that the county needs to have some kind of an insurance policy if we do if Mike's the construction manager and liability falls to the county just because he's doing that role, and we don't have a general contractor there in our protection, then we've got to at least understand what that cost estimate would be for that insurance.
Corey, may I interject?
Yeah.
You might wanna check your insurance policy, it may cover it already,
Okay.
but if it doesn't, then it'd be an additional coverage, okay?
And go ahead.
On the question of cutting pieces, my recommendation would be to not cut pieces now, because you don't know what the costs are going to be when the bids come in. What we typically do is we set up the bid form so that the pole building is a separate bid item. The slab for the manufactured building is a separate bid item. Whatever, we set out separate bid items for each piece. And then in the instructions to bidders or on the bid form, we say that if the budget, if this goes over the budget amount for the project, the owner can line item things out of the bid. So if the pole barn, for instance, is, $100,000 and it's way over your budget for the pole barn, then the commissioners can line item that piece out, but still go forward with the rest of the project. That make sense?
And we did that already, it does make sense.
Yeah,
And I think we
because
should continue
right
that.
now, without the bids in, you don't really know we're just we just estimates. But you
Right.
hate to cut anything out and then have to add them. It's easier to cut them out after the fact than it is to add them in later when you find out that your bids came in lower, so now you can add pieces in.
We also made such a bare bones plan that there isn't really a lot of cutting that we could do into fat. I mean, we'd be cutting muscle and bone, which I don't think is something we wanna do.
Yeah, cut the pole barn, might as well not do the project.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
exactly, or cut the roof off, it's not gonna do you
Right.
much good,
Please check your funding source.
yes.
Some funding sources have regulations in them that say you cannot piece and part a bid to reduce the cost. And unless you prioritize the items in which you're going to, in other words, you put in your bid, it in priority of your preference. If you can take all items, wonderful, but you start at the bottom and you work your way up if you can't.
Okay.
And you can't move them around to adjust those dollars. So check your funding source first,
Okay.
because if it doesn't say anything, then you're okay, just go ahead and do it. But if it has a statement in there to that effect, you need to sit down and really carefully define which has priority and which does not. Okay?
Okay,
And list them that way in your bid form. And it needs to be stated in the bid form that the items are listed in priority to allow flexibility to the county should they have to reduce costs.
okay,
And they have to do it in a reverse priority.
And maybe we don't have any flexibility, but if you put that language in there, that gives you the flexibility
Covers
in
this.
case.
sure, just in
HUD
case.
is a good
that-
example of that. HUD won't let you do that, period. So I'm just saying, there are some funding sources that are very specific about
Okay,
that, okay?
one thing I did wanna say is, I talked to Julie Zapirian at Centennial Insurance, who's our insurance carrier.
Okay?
And she did say our insurance, and I can get this in writing, but she said our insurance covers this would be covered under our general liability clause, and it's extremely, she had a hard time finding any examples of additional insurance for the county for more than what we have already. And I forget her terminology, but I do have that in writing for you.
All of us do not want someone to get hurt on this project
Right,
and have the county go to legal action. without some insurance coverage.
Yeah.
Well, I would assume with the road activities, the road department stuff that you guys do,
Yeah.
I would assume you probably are covered by this kind of thing, but it's
According
just,
to Julie, we
yeah,
are.
it just, Ron makes a good point, just, it doesn't hurt to double check and make sure, like you said, it sounds like you've probably done that, so.
Yeah, but I do think we should have it in writing, so
Yeah.
that everybody's on the same page, we all have it in black and white, and there's no misunderstandings.
There's too much to know.
Right, no kidding, yes.
So I guess that's the last item is the, right now we are set with this method, no general contractor moving forward with subs. Do you wanna stay with that method or do you wanna change? I'm recommending that if you stay with the method, we first do a look before we leap, where we actually, I think spend a little bit more time. I mean, well, ironing out the rest of these details that we've talked about today, we'll probably do the refinement of the project that we needed. But, I would recommend that, this seems to be a community issue that's, raised probably a lot more feedback than any others that we've seen this year. And, I mean, if it was a matter of $40,000, I'd say, sheesh, that's an easy one, do it. If it's $40,000 and that gives you a general contractor who's responsible for everything, you've got that liability protection, they still answer to Mike as the owner's representative, and we don't have a matter of subcontractors pointing their fingers at each other if something goes wrong. In my mind, that's money well spent. If it turns out to be much more and it kills the whole project because of it, and, you know, then we have consequences that I think are larger to deal with, so.
You mentioned that having a public comment.
I would recommend whether it might even be a night meeting, because it's so hard for a lot of folks to get here for a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning meeting. Might make sense to do an evening meeting and kind of an open house, and lay out the whole project, have the drawings up on the wall, and talk to people. And this, you know, what happens with community decision-making in America, it's like trench warfare. And, you know, I was a civil lawyer, and I represented a business owner in Helena, and the city was determined to go forward with a roundabout that would have cut a big chunk off his lot and potentially closed down his store. And, basically, he and a bunch of other business owners just felt like no matter what, the city was not listening to them. And so, we didn't even sue, but they retained me, and I just went to some meetings and said, look, you guys have to look at this property issue that you've blown over repeatedly. And it wasn't even so much that they were ignoring it, is that the people felt ignored. And what always happens in the Administrative Procedure Act that the federal government established in every state and every local government follows in some way, even though if they're slightly different, it's trench warfare. If you don't like it, sue. Stop it for 2 years while everyone fights and bills go up and nobody wins. And then usually the way to prevent that from happening on the front end is listen to people and make them feel that they're being listened to by actually listening to them and hearing them out, and more information is better and more daylight is better. So I would recommend, we're at a point here where we are doing some resetting, we're making this thing line up procedurally and substantively the right way. I think it's worth the county's while to have an opportunity for everyone to come in and not only voice their concerns, but to hear from you know, this team of all-stars, like, hey, we've got this thing all set. And I think that will do a lot to prevent a lawsuit down the road and prevent a bigger fight on the next project that the county wants to do, because we're in this for the long haul. That's my recommendation.
I would also like, with that recommendation, to set the date today. I'd also like to have the same meeting at the southern end of the county and the northern end of the county. I'd like to have as much of this team as we can at that meeting, so that everybody's available to answer the questions firsthand, rather than somebody else relaying what they understand for credibility reasons. And I would like this team to put an article together for the Three Forks Herald, the Broadwater Reporter, and the IR, explaining the whole project. Again, not from just the commissioners, but from the whole team, if that's agreeable to everybody.
Makes sense.
Do you think 3 meetings are necessary? I mean,
Well-
I'm not saying they're not, I'm just,
You know what, I don't know, and I'm open to debate on that, but I will tell you what, I put together, and I just went through what I have. I keep all my agendas and I file them. I have them all at my desk back to just July of 2 years ago. And I counted the public meetings, and I have them all listed here, you guys are welcome to those. We've had 21 in 2 years on this project. And that's not including the first half of 2013 or 2014 or the end of 2011. We've had 21 public meetings. We've been laying everything out. We've had the testimony. We've had every single part of it. Sean's been in a number of those. And yet, so much of the information is, we don't have a county engineer. Well, yes, we do, and there's actually 3 public meetings that show that process in the list. Mike has no qualifications. Well, yes, he did, and that does, and that has been brought out in multiple community meetings. So, yeah, I think we need to have at least one more. I almost think, you know, more is better. I think we need a PowerPoint that shows at least the 21 meetings plus whatever else we can find. And really just put it out there. We've done our due diligence and we're doing even more. I guess that's just where I'm at. And I think I have the list right here. Couldn't find it there for a minute. There you go. Here's the full list of all those meetings. I'll keep one, you can share them.
Here, I think to pass mine down.
And
Here's
here's
the
one.
comments that, come out from people too. I just made those copies.
Can I have a copy of those too, please?
Me
You
too,
got it.
Franklin.
You got it, that's the one that was sent to us.
Oh, yeah, this one was interesting. This also talked to the fact that we have no county engineer. We do. We have no qualifications with Mike. We do. So maybe 3 public meetings that can address, you know, these articles and letters that have been sent is important. We need to make sure that the people you aren't hearing from are solidified in, oh yeah, this is the county sharing this with us again. Because you're not gonna hear from those folks who understand this.
We've
So,
heard from a lot of taxpayers and contractors both here. Meeting after meeting.
so would it make sense to, you wanna do all 3 right now, or start with one and then see if, I mean, if there's an overflow crowd, or if only 5 people show up, then we might know whether additional meetings necessary. I mean, I don't care, I think it would make sense if we're gonna do that to set a date, and then that'll give us time to, or give us a mark on the wall to get the rest of these items done.
I'd like to set at least 2.
Okay.
Here in Townsend in the evening, one down at the southern end, Wheatland. Because there is so many miles dividing the 2. And if we have overflow crowd, I'd like to set up a date for a second meeting at the north end, and, or the east, to address that. If we don't need them, we don't follow through with those. If we do, we have them already set. We don't have to come back here and, you know, pull the whole circus together again. So,
Have a date in mind?
any,
You should, I'm okay.
I would suggest June 3rd for an evening meeting in Townsend. June 4th for a meeting down at Three Forks. And I would suggest 10 a.m. Or evening, 6 o'clock, what do you guys think?
That's safety, that's week.
Oh, it is, isn't it? You'll be gone which days?
Floors.
I can be here for it, just won't do it.
What do you guys think? And
Without my schedule,
maybe we can
I'm
have,
sure that,
um,
that first week, I think we'd have to go to the second week,
why is that? I don't
as
think
far as
we,
my part is. I'm trying to think without my schedule here, but I know I've got to,
well, instead of going further back in June, maybe we look at May again. I don't think we need to be making this as far out as possible. I think this is we need to address this ASAP. We have the city council on the 26th, is that right?
That's today.
We're already last
That
week.
last
Wednesday.
week is May.
That's right, how did that happen? So city council would be the
It's-
second.
The second city council, so, yeah.
Okay, so this could be the county traveling week to address all this. Second, third, fourth, and then we set up the 9th and 10th as backup days.
I'm out of town the week of 8th for National Guard,
Okay,
but I'm not probably needed for that last round.
so, but I think you would be for the first round, so if we could do it the first week of June, I think it's the only one we've got, unless we wait till the third week, which, well, then we're getting into summer events, we're not gonna have many people. Okay,
So the second, City of Townsend council meeting, right? And then we get the third, you want the evening meeting in Townsend,
that's my suggestion,
okay?
yes.
Here, assuming? Or do you wanna do it somewhere else?
You know, we generally have these kinds of evening meetings at the school, at the community room.
Okay.
I could see if it's available. I could get back to all you guys via email, let you know what is available, and we could have it there.
6 o'clock?
6 p.m.? Yeah.
And then you wanna do the fourth in where?
I would suggest Wheatland.
Did they have a community room or something?
No, but we can contact, Wheat Montana has a meeting room. It's fairly small.
Or the cattlemen's?
Mhm. That one's another one we could potentially use.
So you're
The
talking about the
acoustics.
the interchange intersect thing down there?
I-90 interchange, yeah. It was called Wheatland with the census.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a specially designated place, I think is what it was called.
Learn something here?
Are you saying evening on that one, or?
I would actually suggest daytime, and the reason that I would is because we have been at their request trying to plan, taking our meetings down to the southern end, even starting with just public comment, what's on your mind. This could actually tie into that very nicely, so I'd actually suggest 10 o'clock.
I have court. I have court at 11, and 1:15.
Okay, how about an evening?
Well, again, if you want to do it without me there, you can do that, but evening's fine with me, I don't know what everybody else.
Sometimes meetings, right?
So 6 o'clock there too, does that work for everybody? Okay.
On what day?
Fourth, June 4th.
I know I've got something on the 4th, I can't think. I don't have my calendar here.
And then we'll reserve Tuesday, Wednesday, the next week as backup meetings if needed.
My wife would come Thursdays.
I'm so sorry. You know, it's,
Our husbands aren't either, but you know.
I know, yeah.
It is what it is.
Anybody got a caregiver
Yeah.
for those nights?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that, I know, it's tough.
My wife needs that.
Now, Ron, is this, since you are a sub of
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll
WWC?
work something.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need to be here or not. That's fine, I can go.
yeah, I know, evening meetings are tough, they are on people and with people with children. So, yeah, if Jeremy, if you could pinch hit for Ron, that would be.
I'll twist Sean's arm.
Have-
Yeah.
I might twist Sean's arm, you just come to one anyway.
Yeah.
It's probably would hurt if you come to one anyway.
Yeah, that'd be
It'll
great.
probably be, though, don't.
Okay.
I might make it one.
Okay.
But, yeah. Nights are hard in our house, so.
Yeah, no, I understand that, yeah.
Been there, done that.
They are.
Okay. Well, I guess I took an hour, more than an hour, almost 2 hours every time, hour and a half, I guess.
So you had asked Corey, if we wanted to, stay on the same track we're on, and that is keeping Mike as the general at this point, keeping the modular and moving ahead. And these meetings are to inform the public and also collect their feedback. Certainly, if they bring something up, we could always backtrack at a meeting to change our mind, if necessary. Is that agreeable at this point?
That's a pretty simple change on the bid form too.
Okay,
Basically, we would just, it's either you require one bidder, and they have to bid on all items on the bid form, or you say you can bid on whatever item you want to do. Does that make sense?
it does.
So it's an easy bidding wise, it's a fairly easy transition. You know, so it's not gonna take a bunch of work to go
Okay.
with a general versus subbing.
So at this point, for where we're at, moving forward, we are at status quo and we're moving ahead with Mike as the general, and our bid will be as it has been defined today. And we're informing the public, but we reserve the right to readdress this if more information none of us has thought of or didn't come up in the past 21-ish meetings to.
We gotta get this
be voted
information in there
necessary. Was
first.
that,
Well, it's really us asking you that. I mean, but I
okay,
think, as I understand it today, that's that absent the commission saying, do this differently, we are proceeding on the track that we've been on. And in particular, the fact that we own the modular and the alternative method of architecture makes the most sense probably for the pole barn construction. Really, the only item that's kind of would be subject to that significant change would be whether to change it to a general contractor in terms of the bidding process or multiple subs. And other than that, really what we're doing is finalizing details for the bidding process. And my recommendation is that that public meeting is both to inform the public as well as hear from them, because that is the item that has raised the most, at least prompted the most public information to us, so.
okay, so you want a motion from us so that everybody's on the same page. I would think that would be the smart way to go.
We need a motion. First of all, I gotta get this figured out.
You know, I'm
We're
gonna
going on the
read.
track.
I'm gonna reiterate that I think we should have a motion, just because in talking about the modular, we had two different stories coming out of right and left field. I think we need to have a
Back and forth,
motion,
oh, we sure did all right.
and I guess that solidifies why I think we need a motion. So I will move that we follow through with the building project,
Track we're
on the track that we're on, to hold public hearings, to hold public meetings, to hear from the public, to inform the public, and to then submit an invitation to bid as approved by legal counsel, to follow the awarding provisions contained within the invitation to bid, to accept the lowest responsible bidder on
All
the,
comes out on this
excuse me,
bid form.
on the date set in the invitation to bid. Does that work?
on. Second.
That's the motion as stated then?
Yes.
Moved and seconded for that version of the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Okay, so I'll do some follow-up work on this, and I'll be talking to you quite a bit, Jeremy, I think, and, I guess we'll need to hear back on June 3rd and 4th if those meeting dates and locations work, and we'll move right along.
I'll work on the letter and the bid form and the instructions of bidders.
I will nail down the location for those meetings, and if we're agreeable to the article, start getting a draft together with assistance. Send it out via email. And get it in writing from Julie on liability insurance.
And then, so the city council meeting is the evening of the 2nd. It sounds like we anticipate having a presentation to the city council. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay. Okay,
I would think we, in I guess, presentation, present the plans and the letter, the proposal letter. That's really probably all they need. I don't, I just,
I don't think
the
they-
plans and the draft letter, or and the final letter, excuse me,
Yeah.
I think would be sufficient.
I think one thing we should address for them clearly is why they weren't integrally part of the planning process. This is a county project, it's not a city project. They're always our partners, but we need to address that so that there aren't any ill feelings.
Do you want me at the city council meeting, or you and Mike gonna handle that, Corey?
Actually, as city planner, and doing the annexation, they might have some questions for you.
I thought so.
Okay, sorry.
I'd say that's all. Okay, great.
Take your wife out to dinner the night before and they can be in good graces.
I got a city of Culbertson council meeting, I have to be on Monday night. so-
Culbertson, wow.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I had a
Good thing we're
teaching
going on
class there.
vacation, a week or so after that, so
There you
I'll
go.
redeem myself.